Redditors who have been proposed to, and the answer was no. Why and how awkward was it? Story 1. First, a disclaimer: while this didn't happen to me, I was involved in it. I'd been dating this girl who'd later be my wife for about a year. During that time, she'd been in touch with a friend, an ex. I didn't really worry. I was comfortable in our relationship, and we were honest with each other, so when she told me that the guy was just a friend, kind of weird. But okay, I took her at it. We were out at a park in her hometown one afternoon. I was taking bad photography because I haven't an artistic bone in my body, and we'd decided it was time to finish. We walked back to my car, and there was this guy. I knew who it was from her photos, but I was like, so she's like, oh hey, what's up? Dude decides to go for the gold, drops down on one knee, and asks her to marry him, while she's out on a date with a different guy that she'd been seeing for over a year. Note, she thinks this guy is her friend, and not even a friend-zone friend, just a dude. They had dated 3 years previous for like 2 weeks before she broke it off. She looks at me, then looks at him and goes, "You're not serious, are you?" He gets up, looks at me and gives me a look. I was in better shape back then, 2005, and at least 6 taller than dude. He was kind of squat, kind of mushy, which is fine, but remember, pick your battles. He takes a swing, I step back out of the way, he rushes me. I move out of the way, he goes running across the parking lot to his car, peels out, and that's the end of it. Or so I thought. The next day, I get a visit from the police. Apparently, I was in a fight with this guy and beat the out of him, and he believes that, for her best interest, there should be a restraining order against me on her behalf. I ask the police if this is legal. They say no, but he can get a restraining order. I tell them I didn't touch the guy, and they show me a picture. Dude is beat too, so I have to give a statement. I tell them what happened. They look at me, take a snapshot of my lily-white non-damaged hands. If you beat someone down, you'll get bruises on your knuckles and go on their way. Dude gets in trouble for filing a false claim. As the GF tells them the exact story I did, 2 years later, I did the one knee thing. A year after that, we were married. Fun times. Story 2. I said no twice to the same man. We had only been together a few months, and had been married more than a few times before. The first time I said no, he cried and cried and cried. A couple hours later asked again. I again said no, told him it was too soon. Then I let my mother get in my ear with her "don't let this one go Bologna." I said yes the third time, on the condition our engagement lasted a year. Him and my mom steamrolled me, and we married a couple months later. I put him on my health insurance, and he had 3 surgeries that had put off because he couldn't afford it, then moved in with our realtor. He was engaged less than 2 weeks later. Our entire marriage lasted 8 months. I hear he's on wife 12 now. Story 3. I didn't get a no exactly. She said, "You're crazy, 20 years old, dating just a couple months." I said yes, but will you marry me anyway? She still thought I was crazy, but married me soon after, 38 years and counting. Story 4. I caught my then boyfriend talking to another girl online and confronted him. To prove his love, he asked me to marry him. To which I replied, "Next time you propose to a girl you better be on one knee, have a ring in your hand, and you sure as need to pronounce her last name right." He then attempted suicide and I wrestled the gun out of his hand. Fun times. Edit. Wow. Thanks for all the primarily great, thoughtful and understanding posts. I don't engage or communicate with this fellow anymore. If you were to call ID, listen, but I won't let it affect my life anymore. I've been through this a few times with relationships and friendships. It's never easy, but that's life. I'm now in a ridiculously stable relationship and couldn't be happier. Story 5. When I was 16, I dated a guy who was 18. We weren't serious or anything, just fun group type dates. One night, completely out of the blue, he proposed. I was so shocked I just blurted out, "No." Then he spent the rest of the day trying to convince me. I told him I was way too young to even think about that. Next day, a friend says, "Hey, did you hear guy is getting married?" For about 10 seconds I'm completely confused. I know I said no over and over again. Then friend says, "Yeah, he's marrying some random girl I didn't even know." Turns out, I was his public girlfriend. She was his private girlfriend. As far as I can figure, after I turned him down, he went to ask her, dodged a bullet with that one. Story 6. My mom said no to my dad twice, and the third time was just like, fuck it, he's persistent, he'll give him that. What do I have to lose? Had 2 kids and then divorced, and now she hates him and he's secretly still in love with her. It's weird. Story 7. It was my sophomore year of high school. We had been dating for 2 months. He legitimately asked his mother for his grandmother's wedding ring, and she agreed to give it to him so he could propose. Beautiful ring, crazy family. Story 8. She just wanted a green card. I didn't love her, I did not want to commit a felony, I was too young, and I worried about how much a divorce would cost me. It was awkward until I walked away and never spoke to her again. Afterwards it was a lot less awkward. Story 9. I had been saving up for 4 months to buy her a nice ring, and it just so happened that the week that I finished paying it off was the week before her birthday, so I had no money left for her birthday present. And I had a whole night planned in 3 weeks' time where I was going to propose, and I had her best friend flying in from England to help, but on her birthday she kept hinting, "So, where's my birthday present?" She did that all day, until after dinner she just blurted out, "You didn't buy me anything, did you?" By this time I felt awful, so I stormed down the hall into the spare bedroom, went to my stash spot, grabbed the ring, stomped back to where she was in the lounge room and half-handed, half threw the box at her, and just kinda when I didn't have any money left for your birthday present, because I had spent it all on this. She broke down crying, said yes, and then left me for her personal trainer a year later, but thankfully before we had gotten married, I hope you choke and die on his well-defined muscular. Story 10. I met this guy at my university. We dated for under a year. He already had a degree, was pursuing another one because his first one didn't allow him to get a job. After 2 semesters, he found out he couldn't pursue that degree anymore. His financial aid ran out. He used too much of it, had either have to pay his tuition out of pocket or pay off his debt. I offered the idea of going into the military to help with his debt education. To set the mood, please picture a crowded pizza place in the afternoon. The man is in front of me, not on his knee, he doesn't have a ring, and I paid for our pizza. So after I told him about going into the military, he jokingly stated yeah, and then we could get married on many occasions. He told me he never wanted to get married, so that plus the whole scene, I thought he was joking, so I said no. I felt like it would be weirder to say yes to a fake proposal, like a super crazy thirsty wanting to get married yeah. Turns out he wasn't kidding, at all. Thank God his mom is so nosy, otherwise I wouldn't have known how he really felt. He's my husband now. TLDR, I thought he was kidding when he proposed, so I said no, we're married now. Story 11. My ex contacted me via text a couple of days after Thanksgiving, asking me if we could get married and run away together. When I told him that was a little strange, he lost his mind, accusing me of judging him, and that is why I said no. That is also what made it incredibly awkward. Story 12. It was weird. It was at her wedding in front of everyone. She gave me some excuse like, are you serious in getting married today? She is such a... Edit. Well, holy thanks for the gold. Story 13. Not really a proposal, and not really a no. I was with my girlfriend at the time for 6 years, so I decided I should propose. We'd both talked about marriage and both agreed that we'd want to get married, and we loved each other. I had sappy romantic plans. I had a ring picked out. All I needed was her ring size. So I had my mother oh so discreetly ask for her ring size in a text message, claiming it was because she was getting a ring for a gift for her. Well, she caught on and figured I was going to propose, so she promptly drove to my house and broke up with me on the spot. I still don't quite know why, haven't spoken to her since. But a lot of time has passed. I'm glad she turned me down because I'm happily engaged now and getting married this year. Story 14. I said no to her. She was nice, but I had never met her. It was just as weird for her. We were both 18 at the time. Say no to arranged marriage. Glad my parents chilled out after that. Story 15. I said no. We'd been together for 2 weeks, sure, everything was going great, but it had been 2 weeks. For extra points, I already had a very public broken engagement, and they knew I had baggage. I should have taken it for the red flag it was and split up with them then, instead of 2 awful years later. Edit. Yes, it was awkward, but much less so than it should have been. Story 16. My ex asked me to marry him. We weren't together at the time at work, though I am, so he would have someone to write home to when he left for the military. I said no because that's stupid, and he had been seeing his ex while seeing me. He left soon after and we never spoke again. Story 17. I'd been dating a guy for going on 2 years, 17 to 19. Lived with him for basically all of it because my mother moved and I didn't want to change school senior year. At a year and something, I discovered he'd been cheating on me for something like 5 months because he'd mentioned to his super ex-hooker coworker that I didn't like and refused to do it. So her being the loving, sympathetic person she was, she offered to do it for him. I didn't leave him when I found out. Stayed for about 2 months trying to force myself to forgive him, but during that time I couldn't. He'd spent a majority of our relationship being abusive, also murdered my dog and hid it from me, so this was the icing of the cake. I left him and stayed over at a friend's. The next morning he shows up with my journal. He'd written some long-winded 3-page apology in it. The last line was, "So will you marry me?" I laughed a lot, and said something like, "Are you kidding me? I'd never marry you," and went back into my friend's house. Story 18. Her dad called me months later and said, "No, you can't marry my daughter, and don't ever speak to any of us again." Mind you, these people were like family to me for a while, or so I thought. She went along with it, so I guess he did me a favor in the long run. Now married to someone who has parents that actually like me, so that's cool. Story 19. After I broke up with my ex, I was devastated and went on a solo trip to another city, 8-ish hours away. I met up with some friends and an acquaintance of mine started taking more interest in me. At some point, I told him that I wasn't interested. He told me he wasn't interested in me but that he wanted some support company because his cancer returned. He was a cancer survivor, so I felt really horrible about the whole thing and being judgmental. To make up for it, I met him as much as I could. Even after I returned, I answered his depressing phone calls, talked to him every night, texted him all day, etc. While trying to get over my ex, one day, just out of the blue, he seemed a little off. He accused me of hurting him, which he has done in the past, and then said he was going to binge drink, which he wasn't supposed to do because of all the medication he was supposed to be taking. I told him to go home and go to sleep, but it ended up being a long night. He drove 8 hours, intoxicated that night to come see me. I was anxious and so frustrated, but he said that he lied about not being romantically interested in me and wanted me to be his girlfriend. I told him that I was still hurting and somehow, that made him happy. He kept proposing from that day onwards and played the cancer card, depression card, suicide card to make me do what he wanted. I wasn't thinking straight because I had just broken up and was having second thoughts, but this sent me into an anxiety-ridden depression, and within the 4 weeks I started hanging out with him, I was hospitalized twice for severe anxiety attacks. Turns out, he had ASPD, lied about everything including the cancer, depression, suicidal thoughts, but still wanted to marry me. He enjoyed watching me suffer and cringe when I tolerated him. For some weird reason, I almost agreed until I confessed what was going on to the nurse on duty, and he set me straight. The nurse is now one of my good friends. My ex-flatmate tells me that our old address still gets letters, proposal rings, gifts from the guy, but sometimes they get bad things, pictures of his dead dog he killed, his pet, or other dead animals, or tapes of him seemingly abusing random women. It's been a year since that happened, but yeah, not awkward, just scary. Edit. A lot of people have been asking me if I've done something about this. Unfortunately, there isn't much I can do, and I don't have enough evidence against him. The police won't and can't do much against a person that doesn't murder or rape or seem to have a series of arson terrorisme. There are a lot of other cases they need to work on, and this cannot be prioritized until he slips up and genuinely hurts me. I don't have enough mental fortitude to use myself as bait, and I prefer to try live life as I'm going to live for a while. Story. 21st boyfriend out of high school. Met him online when I was 18 and he was 24 and was actually in Afghanistan for the Air Force. Now it was a long-distance relationship that was mostly text and emails because he was in the middle of nowhere. He had a very hard time out there and at one point completely cut contact from me and his family, who knew I was dating him. For about 3 months I didn't hear a word from him, so I moved on and began someone else. Lo and behold, he comes home and I break off that relationship. Please don't judge too harshly to go back to him. It was already at a very rough start, for he had huge jealousy issues, refused to talk to anyone about his experiences overseas, who was hurting him badly, and basically it drove him to be an alcoholic. We began an on-off again relationship, which while I was dating other people in our off times, he didn't date anyone and hit me up when he was lonely. Being 18 and at this time now 19, I was dumb and lonely and would go back, but became frequently pissed that he was only paying attention to me when he wanted me while still refusing to fix earlier said problems. Eventually in 2012, I began my process into entering the Navy, which he hated, for he wanted me to join the Air Force so I could be with him easier. He was unsupportive to the point my parents told me they questioned his maturity. He did not like that, and they questioned why we only saw each other once a week when we only lived 10 minutes away from each other. The night he proposed was a night when we were arguing about his career and my upcoming career, for he was leaving for another deployment and there was no way, and I am being ignored again for months. I asked him, what are we going to do, see each other twice a year? No, we will get married, he said with full sincerity. I was speechless because if I spoke I would have told him flat out that I would never ever marry him. It shocked me into realizing that our relationship was going nowhere, and the week after I broke up with him in person, he said nothing the entire time until I got home and my phone blew up about all the bullshit I did. He became obsessive and even had his 11-year-old sister call me names. It was very awkward after, for I kept running into his friends who would mention me to him in passing, which was made worse because I had a new boyfriend with me. I don't regret it, and I refused many times at his attempts to talk to me, for I know he still hasn't grown up as a person. I can tell you the worst part was telling my mother in a passing conversation. She was not happy at all. Whoops. Story. 21. My ex proposed to me prematurely. I did see a future with him, but we were only 18 months into our relationship. He was in a bind. He had an incredible career opportunity across the country, and they would fund a move for him and his spouse. Without that funding, I could not make the move at that point. I thought about it for a few days, and decided that it wasn't the right choice for me. He told me I was wrong and walked away. I have no regrets at all. In retrospect, I think it would have been a disaster had I accepted. It's been 3 years, we keep in loose touch, his career is thriving and he's engaged to a woman who seems a much better match. I ended up moving elsewhere to pursue my own dreams, and I'm so glad I did. Edit typo. Story. 22. I forget how long we had been together at this point. We were still 17 at the time, and she messages me something in Elvish over Facebook. She knew I like LOTR, so I translate it because it looked unfamiliar, and it said, will you marry me? I was like, aren't we a little young? I'm not ready for that, but we didn't break up until about a year or so later, if you thought that was weird. She said I love you after a week and a half of being together. Story. 23. I said no, because you don't get engaged to convince yourselves you have a stable relationship that will make it for the long haul. You get engaged because you're already convinced you will. A ring is not a magical relationship band-aid. Story. 24. My husband proposed to his girlfriend before me, twice. The first time he planned a trip to the mountains with her and his best friend. He got down on one knee and she said not now, so he waited a month and proposed at the beach. They were engaged for about a year, and a month before the wedding she claimed she needed a break. She ended up marrying my husband's best friend at the time. Apparently they had been flirting for a while at work. The worst part was that she was living with my husband still, and she also worked with him, and my mill, and the best friend and best friend's mom's small company. No one cared about nepotism. My mill paid someone a few $100 to have her move in with them. Overall, it worked out in the end. Everyone is happily married with their own family. My mill and best friend's mom still work together. This was like 12 years ago. Story. 25. My high school college sweetheart proposed to me when I found out I was pregnant. He was only asking me because I was pregnant, and because his family was pressuring him into it. We'd been together 8 years in total, so I should have said yes, but when he actually asked, I just didn't want to. The actual proposal itself was in the front seat of his pickup truck during my lunch break at work. We'd just gotten Wendy's and were sitting in the parking lot. I was looking at my phone because I was worried about the time. I only had a half hour for lunch. When he asked, the proposal was something like, so, we can get married, you know, if you want. He then handed me a ring his mom had obviously picked out, still in bag from the jewelry store. I said no, we finished our food, and I went back to work. I didn't even tell anyone what happened because it was so not a big deal. In terms of our actual relationship, it didn't change anything. Mostly because he didn't want to marry me any more than I wanted to marry him. We broke up a year later for unrelated reasons. He wanted to party more than be a dad. Story 26. I'd been seeing my GF for about 2 years. My band was playing a gig, a kinda outdoor mini festival with a couple of bands on. Halfway through the set, my very drunk GF jumps on the stage mid-song and grabs the mic. I stop playing, the rest of the band carries on for a few moments. It's horribly uncomfortable. When they stop, my GF slurs out a proposal. No ring, no getting down on one knee, just a spur-of-the-moment drunken proposal in front of a few hundred people. So being on the spot, I said yes, kissed her and booted her off the stage and finished my set. The rest of the evening she was so happy, all over me, loving life and patting herself on the back for having the initiative and being a 21st century woman blah blah blah. In the morning I told her it wasn't happening and I only said yes because I didn't want to crush her in front of all our friends and several strangers. She was upset but admitted that it was kinda shitty situation to put me in. 5 years later I popped the question to her, sober in private. She said yes, and then the next morning psyched me out and got her revenge by saying I only said yes cause I didn't want to crush you in front of all our furniture. She was joking. Story 27. Not a marriage proposal, but a promise proposal, I guess. Had been dating this guy roughly 6 months, was pretty into him, but something about him just didn't feel right. My family didn't like him at all, and I couldn't figure out why. On our 7th or 8th month anniversary, in his car, he pulls out the shitty plain, blue ring and asks if I'd promised to be with him, since we were young and couldn't even think about getting married. It was then that it hit me that he was not what I wanted for the rest of my life. I thought he was, but I was so wrong. I didn't want him, he wasn't it, he wasn't good enough for me. I couldn't even talk, I was just in utter shock and disbelief. So what does he do? Picks up my hand, and forces the ring on it. Come on, just say yes, he said. It was then I realized how suffocatingly controlling he was. I had given up my friends, changed my tastes for him, broke the battery on my phone staying in constant contact with him, among other things that I sacrificed, and he had done nothing for me, nothing but force a 10 blue ring onto my hand in the front seat of his car. So I told him I wanted to go home. He was pissed. I dumped him soon after. I'm with a guy that is much better now, and I'm much happier. Story 28. Well, it was not exactly a proposal, and I know she frequently said she wanted to get married and have a kid. She was totally baby crazy. I adamantly said no until I'm at least 25. That relationship did not work out, and the ending did involve a dead baby. Story 29. I'm a woman who did the proposing. He was my ex and we were discussing getting back together. I proposed while we were hanging out at my friend's place. He hadn't met them before by writing "marry me" in the corner of a page in my sketchbook. He said no because he was in an open relationship and he was already engaged to another woman. Had been in an open relationship with her when we were dating, so it didn't surprise me. I just shrugged it off and said nothing ventured, nothing gained. It wasn't awkward after that, and when I broke up with him later it was for unrelated reasons. Edit. Why the downvote? I answer the question. Story 30. I dated my high school sweetheart through the first year of college. All through our relationship, he went on and on about how he didn't believe in marriage and would never get married. Whatever, we were teenagers. We broke up at the end of freshman year, but we tried to stay friends because I was too young to realize he was just trying to get me back. He brings up marriage and says I would have married you. I just said okay. He gets irritated and says well expectantly. I replied with clearly, since I broke up with you, I would not have married you. It wasn't until later that I realized, but I'm pretty sure he was asking in some crazy attempt to get back together. He stalked me for another year before I exploded at him. Definitely awkward. Story 31. I have had 3 relationships end with a proposal of sorts, twice before I was 18, only one included a ring, but let me tell you, bringing up the idea of marriage to me when I'm 16 is a good way to ensure I never want to see you again. The first time was when we were on a spring break trip together. I was 16, he was 18. He shared a bunch of really shitty poetry about how much he loved me, and that I was his soulmate. I liked the guy, but didn't love him, and I was 16. He asked me to marry him when we got home, and it made the rest of the trip extremely awkward for me. I waited until we got home and broke up with him. Second time I was 17, and dating a 24-year-old guy, who had been dating for 2 months or so when he asked me to marry him and move with him to another state. Nope, never saw him again. Third time I was 22, and didn't have health insurance. A guy I had been dating seriously suggested getting married so that I could be on his policy. This was another relationship that I viewed as fun, but temporary. We'd only been together a month or 2, I politely declined. Fourth proposal was for my husband. I was 25, and we'd been friends for 6 years, and living together for a year. We had discussed marriage and the future together over a period of a few months. There was no doubt on either end that he would propose soon, and that I would say yes. We got married a year later. Story 32. A sort of proposal. I guess he was testing the waters. First serious boyfriend. I was 15 or 16 and he was 17. He said he would like to marry me when I turned 18 since I would legally be able to marry him and out of high school. I told him I'm not sure if I'd want to marry him when I was 18. If we were still together by then, I might be going to university or traveling. He was pretty upset by this. We were in love, right? Then he brought up getting me a promise ring. I had no idea what a promise ring was and asked him to explain. Queephologist. WTF is a promise ring? It's a promise to get married. Queephologist. Isn't that an engagement ring? Well, it's a promise that'll ask you to marry me. Queefologist, that's stupid. If you want to marry someone you should just ask them. Insert awkward silence here. He then tried to explain how we could get engaged when I turned 18 and not get married for years if that's what I wanted. He was essentially trying to convince me to marry him when I was 15. He ended up marrying the girl he dated right after me. I'm a little late to the party, so this may be buried, but we had been together for 1 month and he proposed in a seaplane on my birthday. It was a surprise, and he was short 75 for the plane when we got there, so I had to spot him. He brought out a ring and asked me to look into the camera and say what was happening so we can replay this moment at our wedding. I told him to put the camera down and gave the ring back when we landed. Story 33. This reminds me of when I was a wedding ring. I had a diamond that was the joy of all the other rings. Or so I thought. One day I woke up and they had strapped me to my bed. I pleaded with them not to hurt me, but they forcibly removed my diamond and replaced it with cubic zirconium. I was left worthless and fell into a crippling depression. I tried to hang myself, but all that did was turn me into a necklace. I was eventually used for a proposal, but she said no. The man threw me into the water where I was eaten by a fish. That's why my friends call me Jonah. I prayed the fish's stomach acid would kill me, but it didn't. All I want is my diamond back. All I want is to die. Story 34. I said no because it was in game for him to keep me around. I knew our first big fight he would throw it in my face. I wasn't going to put up with that. Story 35. I said no. I was pregnant with his kid, and I had perceived him to be a nice enough guy. We had problems. It's only now that I am strong enough and brave enough to say that he was emotionally abusive, but I didn't have the clarity of mind or the awareness at that time to express what I felt was wrong about our relationship. All I knew was that I felt this awful black feeling well up in me at the thought of marrying him, like I was headed towards disaster. I know that if I had said yes, I would have cried throughout the ceremony. I decided to be single rather than be with a man who made me sick at the thought of marrying him. Story 36. It was the end of my senior year in high school. I was young for my grade, so I was still 17. He was a Mormon returned missionary, looking for someone to settle down and have babies. We were doing the 90s bear hug slow dance thing and he asked if I'd be interested in marrying him. I stopped, stared at him, and said, "Do you know how old I am?" He didn't, and we never talked about it again. Super awkward. Story 37. I proposed to my then boyfriend, now husband. He said no, not because he didn't want to marry me or wasn't ready, but because Head already planned my proposal and had started doing stuff for it. I was sad until Head finished explaining, and then we both carried on with our holiday more excited than we already were. Story 38. Was proposed to by X while he was drunk. He did not remember the next day. After the 4th time I told him 10 drunk proposals will equal a sober one and He'd have to marry me. That put a stop to it real fast. Story 39. Didn't get a no per se. She nodded up and down emphatically, then beaming asked, "What if I say no?" It embodies our relationship perfectly. Only as serious about things as we need to be. Edit right Eurobatashes 5. Story 40. Was horrible at gift giving. Let it slip that he was getting me a ring for Christmas. I looked at him. "Don't ask me to marry you. You'll say no, not going to lie." He looked crushed and asked why. "I married him once. I'm not going to do it again." Glad I didn't. He wouldn't even put me on the bank account, but gladly took my money and deposited there. I wasn't allowed my own account, and for some reason we were always broke despite me literally never getting money, and having EBT food stamps for food. I've been out of his life for a while now, and he is paying $200 in child support, but also can afford an Xbox, new TV, new car. Meanwhile I'm walking our daughter to doctor's appointments and regularly skipping meals so she can eat, but he buys us a box of diapers once a month, so that's something. Kinda want to hit him up for all the money he stole from me, but also kinda hope he has a severe and painful prolapse. Not exactly a proposed and say no, but I cut him off before he could. Still have the ring though, probably gonna sell it for some extra cash. Story 41. Over the course of 8 years, I proposed to my boyfriend like 3 times. He said no each time. I figured eventually that it would be better to wait for him to ask when he's ready. He did in December, by the way. Don't let the baby face fool you. We were 26 in those pictures. Story 42. Obligatory, not me, but one of my best mates saved up nearly $20K to take his girlfriend on a trip of a lifetime to Australia. They flew to Sydney, spent a week there, then drove up the Gold Coast to Brisbane and stayed a week there, then got a flight to Darwin and spent a few days there. Then he surprised her. She thought the holiday was over and took her on an internal flight to Alice Springs, and then they went on an outback trip to Ayers Rock Uluru. He wined and dined her and then waited until the sunset hit the rock and made it all red and awesome. Asked the waiter to bring her an extra cushion after dessert. Cushion comes and on it is a purple velvet cloth with a ring. She is still clueless. He gets up, walks over and tells her how much he loves her and picks up the ring and holds it up to her and says, "Will you marry me?" She goes into total shock apparently, goes white as a sheet, whimpers and says sorry no, then storms off to the tent. He's just left on one knee, holding an expensive ring, in the middle of the outback, having spent nearly $20K to get them there. He was so sure she was ready, having joked about it and casually mentioned it in conversation before, and she seemed to react positively. Eventually they sorted it out and agreed that marriage was a terrible idea, but they are still together and loving life with a baby on the way. Still not sure how he got over that one. Story 43. I dated a girl for 4 collective years throughout my junior high school years. She constantly nagged me about, "You're going to propose to me once you get to college, right?" Starting at like 9th grade, by the time I was a senior, she was seriously expecting me to buy a ring and just marry her. She was a religious nut. I had no money, no job, no plan. I was a senior in high school and played sports. I was still a kid. Crazy is now married to some equally religious weirdo she met at her crazy Christian college. Dodged a serious bullet there.